Streatham. Some victims involved in the inquiry live in his constituency. Many thanks for being with us this afternoon. So Dame Lowell Goddard has denied these allegations of offensive and aggressive behaviour, but they are allegations that certainly don't help the inquiry, do they?
No, that's right. These are very serious allegations, and I am a member of the Home Affairs Select Committee, and we have actually asked Judge Goddard to give oral evidence to the committee in respect of the circumstances of her departure, but also to expand upon the memorandum that she provided to the committee with her thoughts on how the work of the inquiry should proceed. For example, she suggested the sheer scope of the inquiry was too large and that it ought to be looked at again. So those are two things that we would actually like to take oral evidence from Judge Goddard on. Now, obviously, she's in another country, far away in New Zealand. There's no reason why we shouldn't take evidence from her by video link, but that's very much what we would like to do. But yes, these are serious allegations. Obviously, she denies them, and we must emphasise their allegations. But if she appeared in front of the Home Affairs Select Committee, she could respond to them more fully.
Are they allegations that you were aware of? Had you heard anything about such allegations in the past?
No, I haven't heard of those allegations in respect of racism. No, I mean, those are entirely new. And let's be absolutely clear who the priority must be here. It is the survivors. The biggest survivors group, over 600 people strong, is the Shirley Oak Survivors Association, as you alluded to there. Many of their members are constituents of mine, and that's really my primary concern. These people, the survivors, have been denied justice for too long. And what they want primarily to come out of this inquiry is for what has been swept under the carpet for so many decades to be brought out into the open and for them to get the justice that they deserve. And that's why I think, you know, some of the commentary around the latest revelations, not just in respect of Judge Goddard, but also in respect of the legal team at the inquiry. The lead counsel, Ben Emerson, recently was suspended and then resigned. But that has precipitated people suggesting that perhaps the inquiry should be shut down or completely reconfigured with new personnel. I don't think that would be sensible. I think the survivors want to see the inquiry proceed, but obviously the different issues that have arisen, which suggest that it hasn't been operating smoothly but it's been somewhat dysfunctional, need to be addressed. But I think it would be wrong to scrap this inquiry. There's still very much a need for it, and we obviously want them to conclude their work properly, in a considered way, but as soon as possible. These, you know, as I said, people have been waiting decades for justice. We shouldn't be delaying them getting justice any longer. Yeah, somewhat dysfunctional could be an understatement. The front page of the Times today says that Whitehall officials covered up these allegations. There is an irony, isn't there, about a cover-up in an inquiry which is meant to be confronting secrecy. Well, these are newspaper reports, so we don't know the extent to which there may or may not have been a cover-up by the Home Office. Obviously, the Home Office are going to have to respond to the allegations that have been made, because it's not just, obviously, as you said, in relation to Judge Goddard, but it's also what did the Home Office know about these issues, if they did exist and weren't just allegations, but these allegations turn out to be fact, and what did they do about that? So the Home Office have got, some questions to answer here as well. But actually, I mean, obviously, Judge Goddard isn't the chair anymore. The chair is Alexis Jay. She will be giving evidence to the Home Affairs Select Committee on Tuesday afternoon. And of course, before she became chair, she was advising the panel of the inquiry before that time. So she was involved with the inquiry during Judge Goddard's time there. So maybe she will be able to shed a bit more light on some of these allegations which have appeared in the Times newspaper today. OK, Chekramuna, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
She resigned as head of the inquiry into child sexual abuse, says allegations about her behaviour are false and malicious. It follows newspaper allegations that the Home Office was warned about the conduct of Dame Lowell Goddard, which included disparaging remarks about Asian men. Here's our Home Affairs correspondent, Tom Simons.
Justice Lowell Goddard launching the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse. She lasted exactly a year and a half in the job, but out of the blue in August she resigned. She explained herself in a letter to the Home Secretary Amber Rudd, who told MPs why she thought Lowell Goddard had gone.
She found it too much for her, and although she could contribute to it, and there was some good work done in the past year, ultimately she found it too lonely. She was a long way from home, and she decided to step down. That's as far as I have. That's all the information I have about why she decided to go.
But sources gave the BBC a different explanation, that she'd clashed with officials, been abrasive, there had been tension, and that she'd been unable to handle a job of this scale. Now The Times has added a new dimension, reporting that she'd also been accused of making potentially racist remarks, including an expression of surprise at the size of Britain's ethnic minority population. Officials at the inquiry's offices in Westminster reportedly raised concerns with the Home Office, but it's claimed months went by before the government accepted her resignation. In a statement, Dame Lowell Goddard said she had consulted her lawyers in London, adding, "I confirm my absolute rejection of this attack. I am confident that in New Zealand, my known reputation from my work over many years will provide its own refutation of these falsities."
My experience of dealing with Justice Goddard, I didn't experience any of what has been alleged. If it is true, then it's pretty damning, but we'll have to wait and see. The most important thing is that this inquiry continues its vital work.
Lowell Goddard was the third chair of this inquiry. Its fourth is trying to keep it moving forward. The latest allegations will not help. Tom Simons, BBC News.
More now on our lead story and the allegations that Dame Lowell Goddard made racist remarks and acted aggressively towards her staff on the historical child sex abuse inquiry. They're allegations she denies. Well, we can speak now to the Chief Executive of the National Association for People Abused in Childhood, Gabrielle Shaw. And many thanks indeed for being with us this afternoon. For victims of abuse who have been looking at this inquiry, hoping that it is eventually going to be a success, these sort of allegations really aren't helpful, are they?
You're absolutely right. No, and these allegations are distressing, and they point to a real lack of trust in the inquiry that some of these victims and survivors may have. I mean, let's remember that people who are abused in childhood in institutional settings were often not believed. They tried to disclose, so they've got many years in some cases of anger and distress. And for them, this inquiry was supposed to be the big chance to examine why these institutions failed, and to see yet another setback like this would be very distressing.
Yeah, and you talk about setbacks. It's the latest in a long line of setbacks, isn't it, for an inquiry that's been beset with problems?
It really has, and this will damage trust in the inquiry. But I would go back one step to why the inquiry was set up, because of the enormous scale and scope of child abuse in institutional settings in the UK. It was a very brave move, an ambitious move, to set up an inquiry of such a wide-ranging nature. And even the latest setbacks and the latest allegations about Dame Lowell Goddard, that doesn't negate the need for the inquiry. And I've heard some calls that the inquiry should be scaled down or stopped. I think that would be an absolute failure, because the need for the inquiry hasn't gone away. In fact, the need is greater than ever for it to succeed.
So you believe this inquiry can be rescued? You don't think it needs to be scrapped and started again? After all, it's cost a huge amount of money and we haven't heard any evidence yet.
Yes, I do believe it can go on to become a great success, and I believe that for a couple of reasons. First of all, because of the political will behind it. Theresa May, as Home Secretary, set it up, now Prime Minister. She has gone on record about how much she supports this and the need for the injustices of the past to be remedied. And the other example I'd point to is that an inquiry of this size can work, and can work well. And I'm thinking about the Australian Royal Commission examining the responses to institutional child abuse. That has been going for quite a few years now. It has gone very well. It's heard many case studies, produced many interim findings. And I think once the inquiry on this country starts to do the same thing, actually starts to produce the interim reports that it wants to, starts to have that public, those hearings, and starts to produce the conclusions and the findings, that will reassure many people that it actually is fit for purpose and is doing what desperately needs to be done.
And what about these calls that we've heard on Sky News today that Judge Goddard should answer these allegations in front of a Home Affairs Select Committee?
I think, yes, I would support that. There's certainly many questions that have been raised by these allegations that were published today. And I think the issue is openness and transparency. Because let's remember, abuse happens in secrecy. It's shrouded in secrecy, there's guilt, it's coercion. And if the inquiry wants to demonstrate that it operates in openness and transparency, having Justice Goddard appearing before the Home Affairs Select Committee, for example, would be a good way forward. But let's not forget that Professor Alexis Jay, the new chair of the inquiry, is indeed going to appear before the Home Affairs Select Committee on Tuesday. So I think that's a very good step forward. It's a very visible way for the new chair of the inquiry to say what's being done and how it will proceed. I think that will actually reassure quite a few people.
OK, Gabrielle Shaw, thank you for your time this afternoon.